Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss franchises that I wish had some more merch. Of course, right off the top here, I want to know what franchises you guys like that just don't have nearly as much merch, or you just, you got to run off to Etsy to find something from somebody that actually likes the franchise as much as you do. But to kick things off, and I'm going to do this as my natural staple of this random little yapping series that I have, I'm going to start with Resident Evil. Because despite the franchise being nearly 30 years old at this point, they never have merch. There's like no Resident Evil merch unless it's like a holiday, or not a holiday, but an anniversary. That's what I meant to say. There's like rarely ever anything that you can get when it comes to like official Resident Evil merch. Like back in the day, when they were literally making like toys that you could get, I'm sure it was a bit different. But now it's like you can buy the game, you can buy a collector's edition of the game, and then that's about it. Everything else really is like Etsy. Like most of the stuff that I've gotten is like collector's editions when it comes to official merch, or once again, anniversary stuff. Like a lot of the shirts I have and things like that, it's all anniversary merch, or it's like, hey, it's the 20th anniversary or the 25th anniversary. That's pretty much it. It's like they don't ever put anything out at random where it's like, hey, here's just a Resident Evil shirt. And at very rare points in time, Capcom does have stuff on their like Capcom store, which once again is like, here's like 4 or 5 things. If it's anything for Resident Evil, I mean, they might have something for Devil May Cry, also super rare, which is utterly ridiculous. That's like, honestly, it's almost sad when it comes to Devil May Cry. It's nearly non-existent, it feels, when it comes to Capcom doing merch for Devil May Cry. So I hope that changes. Maybe with this anime coming out, that'll make a big difference, and they'll be like, oh, like it didn't make enough of a difference when 5 came out, which was amazing, but maybe the anime will be a little different. Like I'm sure there are a buttload of people that never play Castlevania that watch the Castlevania anime. I'm actually one of them. I never really played Castlevania, back in the day, and there hasn't really been a Castlevania game in like an excessively long time anyway. So, that's kind of a part of it. And that's more of a Konami thing where they kind of abandoned that franchise after they tried to do like the 3D game or whatever, and it didn't. We'll leave it at that. But I'm sure there are a bunch of people like myself where it's like, yeah, I'll check it out, and then it was awesome. And I'm hoping Devil May Cry will do the exact same thing, even though it's not the first anime, but it's definitely going to be a bit more widespread considering it's on Netflix. So starting off with Resident Evil, Capcom, like I said, just does that in general. Resident Evil, Devil May Cry. One of the other huge franchises that I truly love that just never gets merch. Every once in a while, once again, an anniversary situation or just a rare blessing from the gods, I guess. But Bayonetta. Bayonetta has so little merch. It's insane. That game has, or the franchise, I should say, has 4 different games in it. The reason we don't get anything from them, for the most part, is because 2, 3, and Origins are co-owned by Nintendo. They saved the franchise. I will always appreciate Nintendo for whatever reason picking it up. It's one of the weird things where it's like you don't expect Nintendo of all companies to be the one to save Bayonetta of all video games, but they decided to do it for whatever reason, and I'm super happy they did. I love the second game. It's actually my favorite. I also think it looks the best. That's just one minor thing that makes me like that game more, but love the franchise as a whole, and it just sucks that we get so little merch. Like this year is actually the 15th anniversary of the first Bayonetta game, and fortunately because of that, and because of the first game actually being solely owned by Sega, they put out merch for that. Like that's the one that's gonna have merch. We'll get into Nintendo in general about this, but they tend not to, unless it's Mario, they don't really seem to jump on merch at all, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But for Bayonetta 1, thank goodness, it's the 15th anniversary, so we got some merch. They did like a pop-up shop, and they also sold some of the stuff online, so I was able to get a hat. I was able to get like a long sleeve t-shirt, and I also got like a giant Bayonetta plushie because I was like, I'll just get it, like just because it's like a ridiculous thing. There's no reason for me to get a Bayonetta plushie, but I was like, I'll get it. I'll get it. I actually like that more than buying like a plate set or something. Like I was like, I'll just get a plushie. Like why not? It's a ridiculous thing, but I was like, I'll buy it. I want some Bayonetta merch. I'll definitely pick that up. Before that, there was a vinyl record, like deluxe set, that I was able to pick up for, once again, the first Bayonetta game, which if you have not listened, oh my goodness, this just dawned on me. I'm always finding random connections because I always forget something when I do these videos. In the soundtrack video that I did not mention Bayonetta. Bayonetta has an amazing soundtrack. They have great music in the Bayonetta franchise. Can't believe I didn't think about that when I made that video. But check that video out, Synergy. But because I love the music and I love the franchise in general, I picked that up, so that was really cool. There was the company First Four Figures. They do very overpriced figures. I'll be totally honest, it was insanely ridiculous, the price, but they did replicas of the guns from the very first game, which at the time I was like, oh man, it'll be cool if they do like the guns from all three versions of the game and I'll get like one gun from each. I don't think that's gonna happen because back then I wasn't thinking about the Nintendo element of that. That's why it was only Bayonetta 1. So, I might only have that replica and that's about it, unless I, hop over to Etsy. But I picked up a replica gun from them, and there was like a very weird random moment in time where they did like a Bayonetta Funko box that you could get, like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was exclusive to GameStop. I don't really remember 100%, but I picked that up because that was like, there's no Bayonetta merch. I don't know why they suddenly made like a Bayonetta Funko Pop, but I'm gonna buy it. So I bought that, and it came with like a couple of different little things, and I did a video on that, so I'll probably throw that in as like the end card to this video. But that blew my mind. I was like, yeah, I'll pick it up. And that was, cheap, all things considered. Like, everything else always comes on. It's like, hey, it's a specialty deluxe thing. Like, everything is always insanely overpriced because it's like, you're not going to get another chance. I mean, if you want to wait 5.5 years, sure, there might be another piece of merch. But for now, here you go. Although there was a Bayonetta music box that was actually on the same website that I got the record from, which was Wayo Records. And the music box was like $200. And it was just for like a cool little, it was just a music box, and it had like, it was like the style of her little makeup kit in the game, and that looked sick. But I was like, $200. It also went up. Like, I remember the price, and then I went and looked at it again later, and I was like, that's more than what it was last time, right? And it went up, and it's a pre-order item too. It's not like it was selling out and they raised it. It was like they just raised the item or raised the price on a pre-order item, and I was like, wow, it was already overpriced. Like, it was $200, and then it went up to like $220 or something. So that was insane, but I'm sure whoever had the money to get that will love it. I wish I had like the extra money. I totally would have bought it just because the song it played was really cool. But I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that just for that. I can't do it. It looks beautiful. It would be an amazing rare piece to have. But I if I'm gonna spend money, I'd rather be able to spend the money and get like 3 separate items that are also still gonna be rare versus like one rare item that was like 3 times the price of any of the stuff that I bought. So I'm sure someone out there will love that and it'll be cool. But Bayonetta is definitely one of those franchises where it's like, I love that franchise, and I'm happy to have the rare bits and pieces of merch that I actually got for it. Like when the games were initially coming out, the only things you could really do were get the art books, which are called like the Eyes of Bayonetta. And I don't think I'll ever have the first one because once that was out, it was gone. And the only reason I have the second one is because they did like this insane, once again, every like couple of years, poof, here you go. And that was for Bayonetta 2 as well. But it was like, hey, we're doing like a reprint of the Eyes of Bayonetta 2. And I was like, what the? And this was only like a couple years ago when that happened too. And I'm like, I think by the time that came out, it was probably like right before Bayonetta 3 was coming out, or it may have even been after. I think it was before Bayonetta 3 released. But I'm like, that was only a couple years ago, and it was super weird because I'm like, Bayonetta 2 is like old at this point, even when that was announced. But I was like, I can't pass that up, so I was super happy to have that. But Bayonetta is definitely one of those franchises. I wish we could get more merch, which once again, Sega barely does it in general because they could at least do more for the first game, but they rarely do. And then I just don't know if it'll even really be possible in terms of the second and third game and Bayonetta Origins, because that would involve Sega like dealing with Nintendo and Nintendo being like, yeah, we want to go ahead and do this. But it's hard to say. It's like, it's a franchise that would make money, especially because the merch is so rare. But I'm also like, you never know with Nintendo how strict or weird they're gonna be when it comes to like, oh, it's a mature game, but it's like, but you guys saved it in the first place, but you never do merch for it. So I have no idea if we should ever expect like a resurgence, or even the existence, I don't even know why I say resurgence. The only thing for Bayonetta 2, I genuinely believe, is that art book, and that's about it. And for Bayonetta 3 is basically the collector's edition of that. So I don't know if we should ever expect merch from 2 and 3. I would love it personally to just have like some cool stuff, and I'm sure there's a couple things out there that may be official, like some small things, but it always surprises me how little merch that franchise has for being as popular as it is. But to move on to another franchise, and this is a series of games actually. It's everything involving Remedy, like just the whole Remedy-verse. Alan Wake, Control, Max Payne, Quantum Break, all those games. Well, maybe I can't say Quantum Break because Microsoft still owns that, but the franchises that Remedy owns, or at least has a license to mess around with, considering we're getting the Max Payne remakes, which I'm super excited for. it's crazy how little merch that they have ever had. Like, I can't believe that they've never made, like, even back in the day, I mean, back when Max Payne 1 and 2 came out, I'm sure video game merch was like insanely new, if it even exists. Like, it would be insanely rare. Like, maybe Mario at that point would be like the only character. Mario and Sonic would probably be like the only two that even had merch back in the day when, you know, Max Payne 1 and 2 were coming out on PlayStation 2. Like, it's not nearly as common as it was today. Like, even comic book shirts weren't as common, you know, back then as they are now. So video game merch, like, basically just you buy the game, that is the merch. So it always surprised me, like, man, Max Payne was so famous. I would love, like, just a cool, I mean, and it's literally just a black and white shirt. You could just give me, like, the cover of that game on a t-shirt, specifically Max Payne 2, and it's like, I'm sold. That's all I need. Like, the cover of that game is one of my favorite, like, cover arts for a video game, which is definitely an idea for a video I'm gonna do later, now that I just thought of that. But I love that artwork. I always loved the old Remedy logo. I was a huge fan of that. Rockstar was kind of being a dick about it because they were like, oh, it's kind of too close to our logo. It's like, didn't you work with these people to make one of the most famous fucking games you've ever had? But, you know, that's neither here nor there. You know, another Rockstar thing that they're like, we want to say what we want to say. So that still kind of bugs me to this day that they had to change their logo because they kind of had to fight with Rockstar a little bit. And plus they still wanted to go back to do Max Payne. So they're like, F it, we'll change our logo because you guys are being dicks about it, which was utterly insane because I always thought Remedy had my favorite logo of, like, all gaming companies. I always liked just the R with, like, the bullet on the inside of the R. I always thought that was sick. Like, there's no connection between that and Rockstar just because it's the letter R. Like, it's the letter R in white and then the letter R in black with a white star surrounded by a yellow square. Like, there is no one is that dumb to be confused. But that's a little thing. You guys can look into that. Like I said, I don't want to get into all that. It's supposed to be just like a random thing to talk about, like, games I love and the merch I wish we had. But Remedy had, for like a small, beautiful moment in time, they had the Remedy merch store. And it was before Alan Wake 2 actually came out. I think it was like right when the remaster had just come out. And they're like, hey, we're launching the store. And so when they first started, it was just like, I swear it was like maybe like 2 shirts and a poster or something, and it was only Alan Wake Remastered stuff. I don't think they even had the Control stuff on there when it first came out. But then they added stuff for Control. They added stuff, you know, for, actually, did they have Alan Wake 2? I don't think they even ever made any Alan Wake 2 merch, now that I think about it. They had like a collaboration with a couple of different companies. Obviously they had, like, if you're into Alan Wake 2, you may or may not be aware of the absolute madness of trying to pick up one of the Alan Wake thermoses. I was fortunate enough to get that, which I have a review on, so if you want to see that or any other random Remedy merch, I probably own it, if I'm being totally honest. I didn't buy everything off of the website, unfortunately. I didn't have the money for that. But I got a hat, I got, I think, 2 shirts. I bought a Control shirt, and I bought an Alan Wake shirt that just has, like, the Deer Fest on it. So it's like, it's one of those if you know, you know type of shirts. So I was super happy to have those. And of course, you know, my Control pyramid hat, so that's sick. But they had, like, coffee that they were selling. They had, you know, mugs from the Oh Dear Diner from the game, which I guess you could say was from Alan Wake 2, if you want to kind of do it that way. It's from both games, technically, you know, the diner's in there. But, well, the thermos is specifically from Alan Wake 2. So they did have Alan Wake 2 merch, but that wasn't on the website. That was specifically a part of their collaboration. And I know they did a collaboration with some company to do, like, a couple of different t-shirts and stuff. And I think that was specifically in Finland, which so was the thermos thing. And that was just a lucky grab I was able to get from IM8-Bit. The second time around, that first time, I was heartbroken. That thing sold out in legit, like, 2 to 5 seconds. The entire stock was, like, completely sold out. Sorry, I hit the mic. I don't know if that actually picked up. But I was, like, devastated. And then the second time it came around, I was able to grab it. And I was like, thank God. So I'm fortunate enough. I got my thermos for Alan Wake 2. I got the Alan Wake 2 Collector's Edition from Limited Run Games, so I was super happy to pick that up as well. And I don't know if they're going to make more merch. Sadly, the merch store that they did have, the Remedy store, shut down. And I was hoping that it was because they were going to find, like, a U.S. partner, because they were basically doing it themselves. It shipped, like, from them. It wasn't like they talked with the company and then they had, like, spots around the world, like, okay, it ships here and here based off of these, you know, like, companies that we're working with. It was like they probably had the people in the offices shipping those things off, honestly. Like, it was shipping straight from them. So I think it ultimately shut down because it was like, hey, we don't, like they made a certain amount of merch and then that was pretty much it. And then it was like, all right, we got to shut it down because it was a spend money to make money situation. And for those of you not like deeply in the know, Alan Wake 2 took a long time. I don't know if it even broke even yet, if I'm being totally honest. Like that's still a thing with them. Like despite the accolades and all that, it still did not make like a ridiculous amount of money for them. And the deal that they had to make to even make it happen was, which is why it's an Epic Game Store exclusive. It was like they didn't even really have the money to make it. They had to work with the Epic Store in order for it to even come out, at least digitally, as far as like on PC. That's why it's exclusive on PC. So, they're doing what they can, but they got a lot of work as far as like having extra surplus of cash. So I think that was a big part of why, unfortunately, the store had to shut down, is because it was kind of just all on them. So I hope it does come back. I hope obviously they make a buttload of money because I love Remedy. They're my favorite developer. So I of course want them to make unlimited games, or at least enough to finish Alan Wake. That's all. Alan Wake and Control. As long as they finish those stories, we'll see what happens with Quantum Break if Microsoft just lets them have it again once the license is up. But I love that company, so I would love to see more merch come out. I buy like all the special exclusive stuff that I can find. So like I said, the collector's edition, fortunate enough to get the thermos. I'm waiting for the vinyl record for the Alan Wake 2 soundtrack. I'm waiting for, I already have the Control soundtrack. I bought that years ago. And I bought the making of book for that as well, which is absolutely amazing. Highly recommended if you can even find it. If you're a Control fan, I recommend picking that up. But I do wish they had more merch. I would definitely buy it. I wish I bought the Bright Fall sweatshirt. You can look that up if you care to see it. But that's the one thing where I was like, dang, I wish I bought that before everything shut down. It's like, as much as I wish I got like one of the Oh Dear Diner mugs, I was like, that's no big deal to me. I don't even use the nerdy mugs that I have unless I'm sick. That's like the only time I ever use a mug is when I'm drinking tea and I'm sick. So those things never get used. But that sweatshirt, that Bright Fall sweatshirt, I was like, dang, I wish I bought that one. So, unfortunate for me, but another franchise that I wish had more merch, or just in general, I guess all of their franchises, however you want to look at it, the whole Remedyverse, I wish had more merch. And I'm hoping when, these Max Payne remakes come out, that we do get some cool Max Payne merch. I have no idea if they would do, collector's editions with a statue or whatever, but it would be really cool to actually own some Max Payne merch. Like, I'm sure there's something out there that's old and super insanely rare, but like there was like no merch made, because like I said, it was back in the day, they were hardly doing that stuff anyway as far as video game merch. So it would be crazy to have some actual Max Payne merch just somewhere, outside of like an old strategy guide. Like it's literally like the only thing I could think of that you could probably buy. Like maybe they had the soundtrack on CD. I don't know how many games did that back in the day, but there's potential. Maybe. I don't know the original soundtrack, but those are some of the franchises that I wish had a lot more merch. I'm sure there's tons of other ones. I would love to hear from you guys. Like I said, like what franchises do you guys really love, where it's like there's just nothing here. Like I mentioned we were going to talk about Nintendo, so this is the Nintendo segment, but I feel like they do surprisingly little merch for their franchises. They do surprisingly little games if it's not Mario or Link involved, but on the merch side of things, it's crazy how little stuff they actually make for their franchises. Like we have Mario, obviously gets a ton of stuff, and then there's like Legend of Zelda. Well, I was about to say Legend of Zelda I consider like their number 2, but actually Mario would be their number 2 because Nintendo owns Pokemon, which is literally the number 1 on Earth. Like they beat Star Wars. Like Pokemon is 100% the number 1 franchise on Earth as far as merchandise. So they don't skimp on Pokemon merchandise. Obviously, you see all the scalpers trying to steal the cars at Target, all that good stuff. People go crazy when they did like the Pokemon collaboration at McDonald's with the Happy Meals. When I went to Japan, that was in 2019, I went to a couple of different Pokemon centers, and let me tell you, you walk in there, you can get like 8 different versions of Pikachu. They just got Pikachu in like a million different, obviously Pikachu's like the mascot of Pokemon, but you can just get Pikachu in like a million different types of outfits. It's crazy. Like you go into those stores and it's just like giant Pikachus, tiny Pikachus, Vaporeons, Blastoise, any Pokemon that you could think of, they have merch. And you can find, and there's so many different Pokemon centers, and then they have giant statues in each one, and each one has different Pokemon in the buildings. It's crazy. Like they do not skimp on anything Pokemon wise. And then Mario, same thing. It's like, okay, that's like your classic dude. When it comes to just Nintendo, Pokemon tends to be very separate from Nintendo, even though, I feel like a lot of people might not even realize Nintendo does straight up own Pokemon, because it doesn't feel the same way. Like when Pokemon is so popular, it's like, oh, it's like its own thing, especially because a lot of people found it from, the anime and the video games. And I don't think they had like the Nintendo logos in those old games. It was just like, boom, Game Freak. So, people might not even realize that, but it's like, no, that's Nintendo. It's another part of them having $1 quadrillion every day. So, Pokemon they don't skimp on, Mario they don't really skimp on, and then right after that, it's like, okay, Legend of Zelda. You can buy the Master Sword replica like all over that place. Like that's like the one thing I see all the time. It's like, yep, you can get a licensed replica of the Master Sword, and that's cool. It's a great looking sword. I love it, and I think I've seen the shield a few times here and there. And other than that, it's like, okay, you can get a couple shirts, especially when Breath of the Wild and stuff came out, and it was like kind of the resurgence of the franchise, and especially like a brand new look with them going with like the blue and white outfits instead of the classic green. It was like, all right, they kind of dived in on the merch a bit. But even then, it's like, that's not a ton of merch. There's not a lot. And then after that, it's like, you might as well not exist. Like maybe Donkey Kong, and that's more tied to Mario than anything else, because that's kind of where it started. So Donkey Kong kind of slid in there, and him and his crew slid in there with Mario, and that's about it. Like everybody else is like, yeah, we do not care. That's pretty much how Nintendo treats them. And once again, you can say that in the same way for the video games, if we're being totally honest. Like they're not gonna have F-Zero merch when they don't even have an F-Zero game. Like it's not gonna happen. The closest we got to Nintendo being like, hey, we own these franchises, why don't we make merch, was them making the amiibo. And that barely counts. Like it barely counts, because they were just making amiibo for like all the Smash Brothers characters. That had more to do with Smash Brothers than them celebrating their own franchises, really, because they made them amiibo for everybody, which I did appreciate, because that allowed me to get some Bayonetta amiibo, so I was super happy about that. But it's just really interesting how little merch that they seem to make when they have these insanely large franchises. But then, if you're a giant nerd like me, even if you aren't like super in touch with some of those franchises, you still say the same thing. Like, well, it's amazing they don't make more games from these franchises. Like, you have these things. Like, Metroid coming out. Metroid Prime 4 finally coming out. It's crazy. Metroid Dread did really well. Like, a lot of people love that game. And the amiibo for that look super sick. And I know they put out, you know what? Figma figures. Figma, and what is it? Nendoroid figures? That is where you can get some, I almost said Naruto, Nintendo merch. You can get some Naruto Nendoroids, but that's where you can find like official like Nintendo stuff, where you can like just have like a figure of other characters. Like Mario, you can have Lego Mario plush, you can have a million versions of Mario, but if you want like a figure of pretty much anybody else that belongs to Nintendo, you can probably go to like Figma and Nendoroid, and that's where those figures exist. And that's where you can kind of pick up some more like Nintendo franchises, but I think that's about it. And that's nice, especially if you like, posing figures and stuff like that. You can get some really cool stuff, because I think they did do one for Metroid, for Dread, sorry. And that looks sick. I thought that one looked really cool. Not enough for me to pick it up, because I don't care that much about the franchise, but there are definitely some Samus Figma figures out there. And I know there's one for Link as well, but I don't know if they made one for Zelda. Like, she's just out there, like, got a whole new look and everything, but it's like, she's, you can get her as an amiibo, and that's about it. I hope I'm wrong, because like those franchises should have more merch, especially for the fans. But that's the whole point of this video. It's like, you can have the biggest franchises ever, and it's like, man, you can barely find merch. Like, it's so crazy. And I think, especially with me being a Resident Evil fan, it's the perfect example. Like, Resident Evil is like Capcom's Mario. Like, if we're being totally honest, like Street Fighter is of course huge. You can get a buttload of action figures when it comes to Street Fighter, and that's fantastic. But for Resident Evil, it's like, yeah, there's not much. Even figure-wise, like there's some companies where you can get some Resident Evil figures. Pretty much none of those are licensed, but they're still great figures. I got like a couple of 1/6 scale figures, and the one time there was a company doing 1/6 scale figures for, or at least I should say recently, because there've been multiple companies, but recently when there was a company doing like 1/6 scale Resident Evil figures, Capcom just stopped talking to them. At least that's the news that we have. Capcom just kind of just fell off and didn't communicate with the company. So they made 3 figures, and it was like, yeah, Capcom stopped talking to us. And so they couldn't make the figures anymore. And it was like, what are they doing? Like, what is that? Like, I want to give money to my favorite franchise on earth. I want to get like a cool figure out of it for some of my favorite characters in video games. And Capcom's just like, we'll do 18 remakes of Resident Evil, which I do love personally. For me, that's fantastic. But they won't talk to a company so we can get more figures out of it. And I'm just like, come on. So that's my little tiff, we'll call it, with Capcom and them effing around. But fortunately, there's quite a few companies that are doing some not so licensed merchandise that still comes out very, very well. So I'm still getting my Resident Evil figure fakes, but I would have loved it if they kept up with the official license, especially because that company that was doing it, for anyone who might be interested, it was Damn Toys, DAMTOYS. They only did Resident Evil 2 because Capcom stopped communicating, but they did Leon and Claire, both their outfits, so their remake outfits and their original outfits, and they also did Ada, but only in her remake outfit. If they did her classic, I would have got the Ada figure, but I wasn't that interested. I don't really like the new outfit for RE2, so I kind of skipped over that. But if you're interested, Damn Toys, and you can just look up a bunch of other companies that have made, I don't want to say illegal, so that's why I'm saying non-licensed, but that means the same thing, just so you know. Resident Evil figures, but they're out there. You can definitely pick them up. But that's the end of this video. I would love to know your thoughts on franchises that need more merch, the things that are just like, how is this so popular? Resident Evil being a great example, nearly 30 effing years, and I can only get a t-shirt every 5. That's crazy. So I would love to know what franchises you guys have where it's like, why do I have to suffer? Like, you actually want to give this company more money because you just love that franchise. You love, maybe even if it's just one character that you wish had a thing. I would love to know what it is. And it doesn't have to be just video games. That's kind of what I typically go with because it's been literally decades, Resident Evil being the #1 example. But it's typically with my video games. Anime, you can get a lot of good stuff. Although I will say, I wish there was way more Soul Eater merch. That's the one anime where I'm like, I wish I had more, because that's my favorite anime and manga, actually, is Soul Eater. So I wish I had more. I recently got like 2 amazing jackets from Anime Gear Guru, just to give them a shout out. Please sponsor me. But aside from that, there's not much you can get when it comes to Soul Eater, and that's unfortunate. That might change if we get this reboot. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. But whether it's games, anime, movies, or anything else, I would love to know your thoughts on what franchises or merchandise you just wish was out there for the things that you wish you could just spend money on. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.